Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We're just going to give it just a couple more moments here. Looks like we've got quite a few people logged in, but we are just going to wait just 1 or 2 more minutes, give everybody a chance to get logged in. We'll go over some housekeeping notes, and we'll get started. All right, so looks like we've got probably about 2/3 of the folks that registered are on the call here. So thank you so much for joining us today. We do have some housekeeping notes, of course, as every conference call and webinar has. Just make sure everybody's familiar with the tool. What you'll see here on your screen is our slide presentation as well as media player, which we will not be using today, and a Q&A box. If you want to go ahead and say hi in the Q&A box, let me know that you're hearing me and that everything is good on your end. That would be great. We will be recording this, and we'll send out a link after this is completed, so we can always go back and review part of that. There is a Q&A widget. If you don't already see that on your screen, there down at the bottom in a little purple box is the Q&A. Click on that. We do have some folks here that are going to be able to answer questions. Awesome. Thank you, Willie, Amber. Appreciate you guys letting me know that you can hear me. That's good. At least I'm not talking to myself like the rest of this morning, been talking to myself. Oh, wow. Now everybody's going to say good morning. That's awesome. I like that. I appreciate that. Everybody is on mute, so we're not going to have any conversation, even though I would like this to be more conversational instead of just me just speaking out into the ether. But that's the way that this tool is going to work. So if you do have questions during the presentation, feel free to use that Q&A box. We do have some folks that are paying attention to that and can answer questions or send the notes specifically to me so that I can answer it live on the call. And of course, we can always follow up if there are any further questions afterwards. Across the bottom, you'll see that there are some other options here. There's one, I believe it's the green box with a little piece of paper, and that is your resource list. It might already be on your screen. There's a couple PDFs, so if you want to download those, you can look at those later. We do have some additional resources there. Of course, this is Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. We have lots of documentation, so fear not. If you have questions or you're looking for more details on anything that we talk about, we have plenty of information, so no problem there. One other thing that I will mention, at the very bottom right corner, you'll see a little heart there, and I'm going to talk about that as we click on the next slide here. We do have that ability to make a donation today for COVID-19. So if you are interested in making a donation, we do have that capability. Let's see, what else? What other sections here? We do have a survey at the very end. We would love for you to fill that out. And the reason that we're asking for a survey, or the questions on the survey, has to do with next week's presentation. We're going to do another one of these webinars next Wednesday, specifically around HPE products and services, procurement, as well as our ability to work with our trusted partners, which we'll talk about here today as well during this presentation. So let me back up here for just 1 second, introduce myself. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to the big show. My name is Bob Potier. I'm a solutions architect with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and specifically covering storage. So this presentation is about VDI, talking about virtual desktops. So not necessarily just storage. Obviously, you're going to need compute, you're going to need storage, you're going to need networking, all of those types of things. And so kind of towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about what those pieces and parts would look like. But that's not the purpose of this presentation. We're not going to be talking about, HPE products per se. We will touch on that kind of towards the end, but that's what next week is going to be about, and how Zunesis and HPE can come to your rescue and help you with designing and deploying and managing and procuring equipment, services, and things like that. So again, I do want to mention Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is working very, very hard when it comes to COVID-19 and the coronavirus, and trying to help with not only technology, which we have deployed out across the nation and around the world to help with trying to find vaccines and cures and things like that, but also just financially. And so we do have that the donate button there at the bottom, if you're so inclined. We are also doing a match. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is doing a dollar-for-dollar match with all of that. So huge to work for a company that really is taking this very seriously, and they take it to heart, and they want to really help, which is absolutely awesome, both externally and internally. And you'll also see that we've got a couple things going on right now on our website talking about HPE Financial Services. They basically blocked off $2 billion in financing to help folks. So if VDI is something that all of a sudden really makes sense, but you're like, I'm not sure how we're going to afford this right now, we can help. We have those programs in place that can really help get those things to you faster, and then we can worry about the money later, I guess. I'm not a financial guy. Obviously, they would phrase that a little bit differently. And of course, just what can we do, not only just financing-wise, but also hardware-wise, software-wise, as we're going to talk about here in this presentation. There's a lot of pieces and parts, but HP is making a huge push to making sure that we can help our customers stay ahead of the curve while we're flattening it. So if we want to play coronavirus bingo, or you want to play conference call bingo, we'll try to make sure that you guys can block off some of those squares by saying things like the new normal. We can go ahead and mark that one off, things like that. So we'll try to keep this as light as possible. So thank you very much to Zunesis for putting this together. We certainly value the relationship that we have with Zunesis, and we'll talk a little bit about them specifically kind of towards the end there. Also at the very bottom, you'll see tinyurl.com /HPE COVID is a place you can go get more information. So I'll come back to that maybe towards the very end. I should have just popped up a poll on your screen. And I'd love for everyone to take a second and just click a button there. So before recent events, before the beginning or middle of March, how often did you specifically, not necessarily your entire company, but you specifically, how often did you work remotely? So typically, when we think about working remotely, maybe that meant working at a coffee shop or, something like that. But wherever that was, whether it was a coffee shop or hotels, hotel lobbies, or working at home, at the drive-through, wherever that might have been, how often did you work remotely before all of this happened? So I'd like for everybody to take just a second to go through and answer that question. Because when you think about it, remote productivity has changed quite drastically in the past, 6 weeks, I guess, where it's not just workers, from organizations and enterprises working remotely, but it's everyone. If you've got kids, they're working remotely. They're doing schoolwork remotely, which has its own challenges, not only to the students, but also to the parents who then become teachers or tutors. I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, and we thought it was going to be easy. We were wrong. It's definitely not easy. Keeping everybody on a schedule, keeping on track, things like that are very, very difficult. So the quote-unquote new normal, there it is. Now you can definitely scratch it off. The new normal is, not only are we working from home, not only are we doing distance learning, we're doing telemedicine, right? We have the ability to FaceTime, essentially, or do a Skype call with a doctor to ask questions and things like that. But then you'll also see, martial arts academies are doing virtual classes. Music is doing, music tutors are doing virtual classes. I actually just went and met with a friend of mine the other day, and she teaches music, and she's doing it all online now. She doesn't have a choice, right? So that is kind of what we're doing. And of course, even more importantly, or more near and dear to my heart, is food service, right? Restaurants are definitely suffering during this time, and we're trying to do our part by, ordering food and things like that. But you look at things like Instacart and Shipt, being able to, order your groceries and either having them delivered or going and picking them up. That's becoming a very common thing, and it's actually quite nice. I used to really like getting away from everything, especially with my kids, with the hustle and bustle, just to be able to get away and go to the store. But now it's, obviously I can't just go walk around the store, lackadaisically like I used to. So being able to get online and just say, oh, I want to order these things, and boom, they're ready to go. I drive up, and they throw them in the back of the car, and off I go. So that is they've seen a huge impact on that. And of course, things like Grubhub and Uber Eats and DoorDash all seeing a huge uptick in their business as well, which, if you're like me, we try to keep that at least once a week. Today's our day. Today's Wednesday. Today's our day that we get to order food and not cook at home. So we'll get to enjoy those restaurants that we used to go to all the time. And we get to go and order the foods and beverages, which is even nicer. I don't know. Certain states can do that and certain states cannot. So I know we have some folks here from different states, Colorado and Nevada and Montana. So I don't know who can do what, but here in Colorado we do have that capability to get food and beverages delivered straight to our house. So pretty nice. Now I just wanted to point this out because I thought it was kind of funny. We do have a huge graphical library that we have the ability to go to get pictures, and there was actually a quote-unquote work-from-home library that I could take pictures from. And one of the pictures was this one where, we can see the ladies there working on her laptop with her phone, and the gentleman's in the back on his phone looking out the window at the she shed, trying to figure out how to do some construction there or something. I don't know. And then you've got the kids supposedly working on their homework. But I thought the funniest thing about this slide is the fact that they very prominently placed the toilet paper, the hand sanitizer, and the thermometer right there in the front and center of the table. And I thought that was very ironic in this day and age. So I don't know. It kind of caught me off guard. So here's the results of our survey, and I thought this was an important way to start to see who has done remote work before, and it actually looks like it's a pretty big split, which I actually kind of expected, because certain organizations are easier and more flexible to be able to do things remotely versus others. So there you can see, almost 20% people have never worked remotely. So all of a sudden, this is a huge change. I'm trying to figure out, where am I going to work? How am I going to work? How am I going to get things done? How am I going to take care of, other responsibilities, pets or kids or other adults at the same time? And then you've got the mix there in the middle with 10 to 75%, which quite a bit have done at least some remote work. And then there's the fortunate few, the 6% that has no idea where their office is because they've worked remotely all the time, which makes this kind of easy to a point. I typically work from home. We don't have offices in Colorado. Actually, we do, but they're too far away. And so I do work from home, but then, of course, being able to go and have in-person meetings is a huge part of our business, and it really does affect personally the ability to go out and meet with people. So that really does kind of put a damper on things. So what are we going to talk about? We're talking about VDI, and I wanted to kind of do this in the old-fashioned who, what, where, when, why, how type of flow, because we're trying to figure out, what is VDI, who uses it, why do we need it, how do we get it together, and things like that. So starting out with the who. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm paying attention to how long it takes these slides to click versus when I click versus when you see it. So hopefully these things are coming across as I'm going. So who's doing VDI now? So I went and looked online to see who had some sort of studies done about who was doing VDI and things like that. And you can see from Finances Online, it was one of the good ones. They had a great article about VDI adoption, and it said that 80% of companies actually include VDI in their strategy. However, if you look at the bottom right, only 62% have an actual adoption rate in the United States. So there's still a lot of folks who don't leverage VDI, and a lot of folks who didn't think they would ever need to, right? Because why do I need to have things available to people who are outside of my office? Right, that just opens up security issues and things like that. But now that is a big deal. We need to be able to offer everything, quote unquote, as a service. We need to have things, quote unquote, in the cloud, right? And so, why do we do that? We're going to look at that. But who is also doing these things? People who are doing these things are seeing a reduction in administrative costs. They're seeing a reduction in their energy bills. And they're seeing an increased productivity. So I can tell you that I've been working from home for more than 10 years, probably actually 15 years, and I feel like I am more productive when I'm at home versus being in an office because there's less distraction, even with having the pets and the kids and the spouse and things like that. It seems to be that I can really get super focused, hyper focused. When I'm at home versus being in an office where I have a lot of distraction. We have people singing happy birthdays to people, and there's people stopping by your cubicle or your office, and so there certainly can be an increased productivity there. And then it also can be detrimental because then you kind of fall into this lull. I was actually just talking to somebody yesterday. My office just happens to be a split room where it's my office and it's also our home theater. So I have a big screen on the other end of the room. Well, I'm moving soon, so I've been moving stuff around, and so I took the Xbox and I put it on my desk, and I connected it to one of my TVs or one of my monitors here so I could watch Netflix at night. Well, I had to remove it because it became a distraction because I thought, I'll just take a little break here and I'll watch one episode. Right, and so it became a detriment to my productivity, and so I had to remove that detriment from my desk. But you can also see there, with energy bill cutting, think about it. If we come out of this where companies, organizations start to realize that folks can be productive and work from home, there's less requirement for physical space for people to go to an office. Now, if you've ever owned a business or you've been working with someone who's been paying the bill for things like rent and electricity and things like that of a lease of a building, I mean, it is extremely expensive month after month after month. And so having the ability to have some of the workforce work remotely could be a huge advantage. So that brings me to my next question. So since you've started working at home over the last couple weeks, how much of your infrastructure or your applications have been available? So have most of the things that you've been doing when you normally go to the office, has that stuff been available to you? Or do you find like, gosh, I don't have access to this, or I have to remote into that computer, which then remotely connects to another computer? And if you've ever seen the movie Multiplicity, there was a line in there where Michael Keaton says, a copy of a copy is not quite as sharp as the original, right? So when you remote desktop into your work computer, and then you connect a remote desktop to another server or something like that, is that even possible? So that's kind of the question here, is how much of that has been available since you've had to work from home. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the next here, even though the results are still coming in. So that's cool. Keep responding to that. I think that's important for all of us to see. And I'm actually very pleased by the responses so far. That I don't think it was a huge surprise, but it's good because you got to think a lot of things are as a service and a lot of things are in the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. So more than half of the services are available. More of the applications are available while you're working from home, which is fantastic. There are some that are less than half, and then there's some that are fully prepared and who needs to go back to the office, which is where we're aiming, right? That's the whole point of this, is to be able to make sure that we can all be productive 100% wherever we are. So now let's go to the question of what. So when we talk about what do virtual desktop workloads look like? So there's a lot of things that are readily available. Maybe it's a customer relationship management, or whatever that's called, CRM, Salesforce, et cetera, right? Those are all in the cloud, so they're as a service, so they're available. But what do these different workloads look like? And the reason I bring this up is we'll look at this next week with the whole HPE portfolio. Is we actually break down how to size a VDI environment by using these types of workloads. So what we see here is we have light workloads, medium, heavy, and power. And so these just kind of give you an idea of what do these workloads look like and how do we size these things? What makes sense to be a virtual desktop and what doesn't, right? I think everything now can be, but certainly can take a little extra effort, especially as you work towards the heavy and the power side. So if you've done Photoshop, if you've done things like CAD work, you know that those physical servers, before they were virtual machines even, those physical servers were extremely powerful, right? You need a lot of power in order to run these applications. And so being able to run them as a virtual machine, for example, took a lot of resource. And now to be able to then provide them as a virtual desktop, be able to have them available anywhere, that takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of planning. So one of the things that we're going to talk about next week for sure when it comes to what HPE can do is design and deployment, because I think there's kind of this idea of, oh, this product can do VDI because it has enough horsepower, but you really need to decide how you want to deploy those, because you need to make sure that you have enough resources, not only for that application, but also for all of the applications at the same time. So it's a huge thing. And so if we think about as we design and we start to plan, if we don't plan and we don't design it right, we can actually do more harm than good. And so there's the old quote that I actually went out to find out to make sure that I knew who it came from. And I always thought it was Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Failing to plan is planning to fail." And then I found out that maybe it was a guy named Alan Lakin back in the 70s who said it. So it seems like it would have been a lot earlier, way before that. So not exactly sure. All right, so I am seeing that there are questions coming up in the inbox. Kelly's saying that can't hear me, so hopefully everyone else can hear me. Hopefully I'm not talking to myself, because that would be bad. Nobody else has said anything about. Yep, I think everybody else can hear me, so it might just be Kelly. So sorry about that. Hopefully we can get to send out the email with the link, so we can make sure that we get that taken care of. Oh, now I've done it. Okay, there we go. So let's move on to where. So where do these workloads run? So again, if you are not doing VDI today, there's a lot of questions, and certainly we want to try to help with what some of those pieces and parts are going to look like. First of all, we do have the the hardware that we'll talk about here in just a couple minutes from the HPE side, but then there's the software side, or the software layer. Obviously, VMware has been doing VDI for a very long time, as well as Citrix. That they've been doing VDI, and probably are the two, I guess, front runners would be the way to put it. And of course, there's a ton of other options. With Amazon, Red Hat has virtualization as well. So those who are more familiar with the Linux side, that's certainly an option. And then you have, Virtuoso and Neverfail and things like that. So lots of different options here, and we have a lot of expertise in various options as well. So when you talk about, talk to HPE or you talk to Zunesis and say, well, I really don't know the difference between what VMware is going to do versus Citrix. And so we have those. That experience and the expertise as well as Zunesis, so we can certainly help. So when should we start looking at VDI? Probably 6 weeks ago. Actually, probably months before that, so that we could get it all deployed. Because now, if you walk into an office, you're going to be just like Travolta here. You're going to walk in. What happened? Where is everything? Right. So one of the studies that I saw by Vital Smarts was in March. Just in March, so just last month, they did a study of just 1,100 adults, and only a third of them said that their organization even had a plan, and 43% that said that they had a basic plan, even if it was hastily assembled. So no one was. I want to say no one was prepared for this, but I mean there are some organizations who are somewhat prepared. But I think the fact that we have so many people on this webinar today, there are a lot of organizations who were not prepared and now want to start thinking, what can we do moving forward to make sure that we can protect ourselves? So that brings us to the why. So why are we talking about VDI? How does that make sense? Why does VDI make sense to us? Well, number one is we want to make sure that we can be productive. As we saw in that previous chart, we want people to be 98% productive. Leave that 2% off. That's fine. But we want people to be able to be productive, and so we want them to have anytime, anywhere access to everything. Now, granted, we looked at our poll results, and we saw that quite a few organizations, folks that are from organizations today, do have access to everything, which is fantastic. Maybe there are some things that other folks in the organization work with that are not available. So that may be a portion that we need to look at. But there's a lot of folks who said that, more than half, but there's not everything. So that's what we want to be able to provide with virtual desktops. We also want to provide the optimal user experience. Now, right now, we're talking about doing that at home. But once this is over, we want to make sure that we can have access everywhere. That means coffee shops and airports and hotels and everywhere that we're going to be working, because I do believe that when we come out of this, organizations are going to start to realize that working remotely is possible. It's not just, we can make that work, but I think it's actually going to be something that people start to look at. Okay, well, maybe this group of folks who normally were in the office, they don't need to be, right? So I think that's a big part of what's going to come out of all of this. Number three is centralized management. Obviously, we want to make it easier and not harder on IT. Most of the folks that are here today, you're probably in IT. That's why you're here. That's why you're on this call. And so we want to make it easier. We want to make it easier for you and, of course, obviously for your end user as well. And, of course, security and compliance regulations are absolutely paramount. We can never let our guard down. That is number one. So next week when we have our next webinar, we're actually going to have a security, a SentinelOne, who is a security company. They're going to come on and they're going to have a little piece next week, 5-10 minutes, to tell you about how they can help when it comes to security and compliance, things like that, with your VDI environment. And of course, business continuity, disaster recovery plans. We have to have a move forward strategy. We have to be able to plan for the inevitable. Most of the time we do have something like this, but we need to be 100% sure that not only are we providing access and productivity ability to our end user, but then we can provide that all the time, right? It needs to always be available. It needs to always be on. So that's a huge part of it. So again, as we move forward and when we talk about what can HPE do, what can our trusted partners like Zunesis do, we don't want to talk about a lot of that specifically right this second, but I did want to at least mention that we are well prepared. So HPE has products, it has services, it has procurement, and it has trusted partners. So next week we're going to talk individually about these things. Not at huge depth, but enough to give you an idea. When we talk about HPE products, we have ProLiant servers, the Gen 10 servers, which are the #1 servers in the world. They're the most secure servers in the world. They're absolutely amazing. And that's coming from a guy who sells storage, not servers. Synergy Blade systems, Moonshot servers, and then, of course, when you talk about more of the hyper-converged, we have SimpliVity, and we have the DHCI, which is the disaggregated hyper-converged, which is taking HPE Nimble storage as well as ProLiant servers, putting them together and making them into HCI, but a little more disaggregated so you can increase compute without storage or increase storage without compute, things like that. And, of course, we're not going to leave off the networking piece, and the fact that we have something like Aruba ClearPass is a huge benefit when it comes to the whole picture of how we're going to be able to provide virtual desktops. And of course, with services, that's a huge important piece of this, for whether it's help desk and support, whether it's life cycle management, and of course the big piece of this, as I've mentioned in several other slides, is design and planning. That's a huge piece of this. And so we want to make sure that you know that we have the resources, we have the experience, we have the expertise in helping you design and plan for this kind of thing. And then, as we mentioned on the very first slide, we do have the ability to help you with procurement, whether that's with our $2 billion little section there that we've set aside to help with procurement, or it's with GreenLake. So GreenLake is our ability to do as a service, pay as you go type of thing. And so we're going to have a special guest on next week as well, who's going to talk specifically about that procurement. And then trusted partners, having implementation capabilities across the portfolio, being able to do assessments, and that's not just on one piece, that's on all of it, the entire infrastructure, the networking, the compute, as well as the operating systems and hypervisors. And Zunesis themselves have been a fantastic partner for HPE for years and years. They are a platinum partner with us, so you can rest assured they know everything that we do. We work side by side, hand in hand, all the time, and so they are a very valued partner for us. And their solutions architects are absolutely awesome. I love working with those guys, and you can see there, which I just got this information the other day to add into this deck. The average is over 23 years of experience. So these guys know, they've been around, they know how to do this stuff. They've tinkered, they've played, they've deployed, they've fixed, and things like that. So huge advantage when we have a partner like that. So Again, we do have another webinar coming up next week where we're going to talk in depth about each one of these things. This was an idea of what is VDI, why are we looking at it, what can it help us do, and now we can talk about how HPE can really help you get that going. So next week's webinar is going to be all about HPE solutions specifically, and so we're going to talk about that, as well as we're going to have SentinelOne come on, and they're going to be talking about security for VDI. So if you haven't signed up for that one, it's going to be really good. It is scheduled for 30 minutes again. However, I'm guessing it might go just a little bit longer than that. So you might want to just go ahead and plan for an hour just in case, because you never know. Plus, if there's Q&A, we might open that up and do some live Q&A as well. So there's your reminder for that. Now, the last thing we have here is a survey. If you would, please fill out that survey to let us know where we can kind of design next week. It is kind of a fluid thing at this point. If people want to see more of one thing than the other, then we'll certainly arrange it that way. So please fill out that survey when we finish up this webcast. That'll help us get the information exactly what you want next week. Again, if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to anyone. Reach out to myself or to Zunesis, who sent out the invite, if you're looking for more information that you didn't either get today, which there wasn't a ton today. We know that, but next week, obviously, there's going to be a lot more information about HPE specifically and VDI and how we can help get that deployed. Then we can always go back and have further conversations afterwards. So thank you so much for your attention, your time today. We know that you get bombarded with these things, especially nowadays. So we appreciate you taking 30 minutes out of your day. Please feel free to leave any comments or ask questions in the Q&A box. I'll leave that open for just a little bit. Fill out that survey, and we will see you next week. Thank you.